Hey Threadheads, Darren here. Welcome back to another fly tying tutorial. Today we're going to be tying the Hula Gurl. This is a fly that I've tied for a few clients over the last couple of years, and typically they're asking for some bright, flashy steelhead colors like the chartreuse and purple, but today we're going to be tying this in a more subdued olive, and this is great for steelhead, but also this type of fly I'm going to be using for some of the larger trout streams that we fish, as well as putting it into some of the lakes for a little bit of pike action and even some walleye. Don't forget to leave a comment down below, and I'll get you entered into the next draw for some flies and decals. Let's have a look at the material list and get started. Let's get a fresh hook into the vise. So we're going to be using a prepared shank, and I'm tying on a 30mm shank here with a 20-pound leash, and the hook I'm using is just a stinger hook that I use for my steelhead flies. I will put a link in the description as well as in the cards for you to where you can find the instructions on how to tie that setup. We're going to be using an olive brown 70D thread, and of course depending on what color of fly you're going to be tying, you want to change that up. So the first thing we're going to use here is a little bit of this Peacock diamond dub or Peacock ice dub. We just want a little bit of a butt on the back of the fly. This kind of helps put a bit of a shoulder underneath our marabou, and it'll help prevent it from collapsing right against the hook, and it'll help prevent it fouling quite as easily. Give it a little bit of a distance outside of the hook as it's swimming through the water. So we'll just dub that onto the thread, and then we're going to kind of wrap a bit of a ball, and then we'll pull all that dubbing back, and I just want to kind of tighten it up with the thread. You kind of see how that kind of puts a bit of an edge on that. And we'll just take our dubbing brush and we'll brush that out a little bit, kind of dip it back and forth and kind of pull out a little bit of that dubbing. And that'll just kind of, what I refer to is give it a shoulder for the hackle or the marabou to sit on. So next we're going to take a piece of olive marabou, and you want to find something that's got a nice supple quill, and for this one we're going to tie that in by the bottom, by the base. We're going to strip off a few of the fibers near the bottom just so that we got a nice area to tie the marabou in so that it's nice and secure. And we want to make sure that the curved side of that marabou is facing down or towards the hook, and that'll help us palmer that really nicely. We'll tie that stem right in along the side of the shank and right into the dubbing ball, and we'll trim away that excess piece there. So you just grab that marabou by the tip, and then you kind of need to use a bit of finesse here, but you want to make sure that you get all the fibers sweeping back, and you want them on, make sure that they're not crossing over the stem as you turn them. So we'll just keep stroking those fibers back on the marabou, and we'll wind that feather forward a few times. You want to try and get this somewhat full, and probably get somewhere between 3 to 5 wraps should be pretty good. And then when you're ready to tie off, you just want to kind of make sure that there's no loose fibers in marabou. You want to pull everything back and then just put a wrap over top. We'll start winding back. We'll flip that tip back just so that it's secured, and we'll trim it away. And then we'll wrap back over the marabou that we wrap forward, and that really kind of secures it right against that dubbing ball that we created. You can kind of see how that kind of pops out the marabou instead of it laying back against the hook shank. So next we're going to take a little bit of the Glisten Gloss Z-Braid 2, and I think the 2 just refers to the size of this. And this is a silver one, but it's a nice flat braid. If you don't have the Glisten Gloss, any kind of flat braid will work fine. I'm just going to tie that in and tie it right up onto the marabou. And then we're going to take our thread forward. We're going to take it about halfway there, and we'll just want to leave a little bit of room for our shoulder up front and our hackles up front as well. But we want to get this center bit of our flashy silver body. So when you're wrapping this, you just want to make sure that you're covering the entirety of the shank, and you're not leaving any gaps in between the wraps. And you want to kind of just make sure that every time you're wrapping it, it's flat. You can get this so that it goes onto the side, and then you get a bit of an ugly bulge there. So kind of the goal here is just to keep that body as even as possible and make sure that it gets completely covered. So we'll just tie that off with a couple wraps, and then we'll just pull that back and do a wrap over top of the end that we're going to cut off here. That really secures it in place. If you want to go an extra step, you can actually put a light coat of super glue underneath the braid before you wrap it, and that'll really secure it. Alright, so next we're going to take a bit more of the Peacock ice dubbing, or the olive Peacock diamond dub, whatever you've got to use. And we're just going to dub another section onto our thread here. And we're going to wrap a dubbing ball to act as a shoulder underneath our front collar. And again, we just want to kind of get that stacked as much as possible. And we'll put a bit of a thread dam in front of that before we grab the dubbing teaser. And we'll just brush that out a little bit. That'll kind of help pop up the Schlappen that we're going to be placing here. Or if you don't have the Schlappen, you can use a bit of saddle hackle. That'll work fine as well. Next, we're going to grab a piece of olive Schlappen. And what we want to do, we just want to prepare this feather so you can kind of pull the fibers away from the back. And we're just going to create a tie-in point. So we're just going to strip those off the stem and cut away that bottom piece, and that gives us a nice spot to tie that in. And we want to tie that with the concave towards the fly so that it wraps nicely around that hook shank. Trim off that stem. So we'll want to, you can take your scissors and run it along that back edge. That'll kind of help kind of train the feathers, the fibers, so that they all sweep back and that you got a nice sweeping hackle. But you're just going to take your thumb and your forefinger and pull those back as you wrap. And you're going to do that about 4 to 5 times, I guess. And that's going to give you a nice full front collar or front hackle on this fly. So then when you've got enough on there, you just kind of pull the extra fibers. You just want to kind of create a little gap in there, and you put your thread through there. And I always like to pull the tip back and just give a wrap over that, just to help give it a little bit of extra security. And we'll trim that away. If you've got a really thin stem there, you can give it a bit of a whip, kind of snap it off. So next we're going to add just the front of the hackle here. If you want, you can give that a little bit of a brush at this point. Just kind of helps tease out those fibers a little more, kind of get them positioned the way you want them before you finish your fly off. Next we're going to take a feather from a guinea fowl. So again, we're just going to do this the same way. We're just going to strip off some of the fibers, all the fluff off the bottom, and we'll trim away the excess. And for this one, we're going to tie it in by the tip. So we're just going to pull the fibers back from the tip. And you don't usually have too much room to work with for the guinea fowl. You probably get 2, maybe 3 wraps if you're really lucky. So we'll tie that in by the tip. We'll fold the tip back and wrap it down, make sure it's secure. And then we'll trim that away. And then we're going to grab the base. We're probably going to need some hackle pliers here. So basically you just want to treat this feather the same as you've been doing with the marabou and the Schlappen. You want to kind of pull all the fibers back. Just got some hackle pliers there to help us hold it a little bit easier. You just have to be a little bit careful with some of the pheasants and guinea fowl. Just the stem is shaped a little bit strange sometimes, and it'll be hard to lay those fibers from the plumage down the way you want them. But just a little bit of patience and keep at it, you should be okay. So we'll give that a couple wraps, and then we'll just kind of clean up the rest of the head here. Trim off the stem. And we'll just add a few more wraps just to clean up the head and give that a nice tapered finish to the fly. Grab our whip finish tool when we think we've got a nice shaped head. And I just like to pop up those fibers a little bit there before you add the glue. And when you do set the glue on there, it'll kind of help keep them in place a little bit. But there you go. That's the Hula Gurl. Hey fly tiers, thanks for stopping by and checking out my fly tying videos. If you enjoyed the video and want to show your support, hit the thumbs up and share it to your social networks. I hope you consider subscribing to the channel, and if you do, be sure to hit the bell icon to get notifications on my latest fly patterns, tips, and reviews. If you have a question or comment, leave a message below. You'll also be entered into the next draw for some of the flies I tie and a few stickers. Until next time, this is Darren saying, keep a hook in your vise. Cheers.